What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and it is match reaction time. And I'm delighted to talk about a Geelong 14-point win against the Western Bulldogs at GMHBA Stadium. It was a tough one. It was a hard-fought one. It looked like we were going to get the better of them at halftime and win comfortably. They came surging back into it. It was a game of swings and roundabouts, momentum changes, and some really hard-fought football. The Cats got the job done, and I'm delighted to talk more about it. The final scores: Geelong, 20 goals, 7, 127, beating the Dogs, 16, 17, 113, 27 scoring shots to 33 from the Dogs. Bad kicking is bad football is absolutely applicable here. But at the same time, the Cats did not make it easy for them in any stretch. 5 posters, though, from the Dogs certainly poses a what if at the very, very least. Let's get into the game a little bit here and go through the worm. We'll talk about, I guess, the momentum shifts of the game itself before we get into some team stats, some player stats, and I talk about some concerns and positives that I've highlighted in this game. As I said, let's begin with the worm here. And there was a bit of an arm wrestle early on. Geelong holding on to that lead, mostly through the first quarter. The Dogs pinching it at the very, very end. But you could tell that both teams were up for the fight. And it could have been anyone's game at that particular point. The Cats then really blew things wide open through that third quarter. Jeremy Cameron, I think, kicked 3 of his 6 goals in. I'm double checking all of it there. Yeah, 3 of his 6 goals came in that second quarter alone. He really piled on the pressure, the heat, and was playing sensational, scintillating football. Had already taken the lead in the Coleman. As of the time that we record this, he is now out front of the Coleman by a few goals at this particular point. I won't be able to check the exact total as we speak, but he is leading the Coleman as we speak. He is absolutely in scintillating form right now. He's kicked 13 goals from his last 2 weeks, and both weeks it has been a pretty decent opponent. This has not been some scenario where he's filling his boots on a North Melbourne or a West Coast, though he's got a game against West Coast next week. He is 4 goals clear at the lead of the Coleman right now, seemingly out of nowhere. He's kicked 13 in 2 weeks and he's just absolutely exploded. So congratulations, Jeremy Cameron. You are in white hot form right now and we are absolutely loving it. But for as brilliant as Jezza was early, it was Shannon Neal through the second half in particular that really imposed himself, that really announced himself to not just Cats fans, but the entire competition. This is a kid worth paying attention to. He kicked 5 goals on the night. I'm trying to work out exactly where they all popped up, but a lot of them in the second half. He kicked his 3rd. He kicked his, there's Jez's 6th. He kicked his 4th and 5th in the final term at really important points. He kicked, 2 of the last 4 goals in the match, giving the Cats a couple goals buffer to work with before the Dogs again had another last-minute crack. It was a sensational performance from him and many, many others. The third term, I think, was the big point of concern for me. And I guess if I highlight some of my issues with what happened for the Cats there structurally, and we heard this a lot in the Fox Footy coverage for anyone who watched that. They spoke a lot about how the Geelong defensive unit pushed a long way up the ground in a really attacking show. And that worked really well for us in the first half and was going pretty well for a chunk of the third quarter as well. But then the Dogs shifted where they were kicking the ball from. They were pushing up a little bit further and then launching it over the top of that normal launch zone where Geelong had very wisely early in the game kind of set up their wall that they were playing from that point, making it really hard for the Dogs. But the problem was they were getting a bit closer, launching over the top and then sneaking out the back and getting some of those goals. And I guess my only major concern is that it took a little while for the coaching team to make the necessary adjustments to kind of bring the defenders a bit deeper into the 50 once again and kind of resume normal proceedings. And at that point, we started to arrest the momentum again and kind of pull away a little bit. So that's kind of my only flaw. It's not really a player-centered problem. It's not even really a coaching-centered problem. They made the right call. I think they just took a little bit too long, probably 5-10 minutes too long to activate that call. The changes probably were made at 3/4 time and they needed to make sure the whole team was across it. But it allowed the Dogs to get well and truly back in the game at that point. It's a bit of a shame. Let's look at some team stats in a moment. First, though, a word from our sponsor, Cyril Cook Florist.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, let's get into the stats here. And there is a big red neon flag that's being flown in my face here because we never see this happen. Geelong won the disposal count. What? The Dogs well below their average, Geelong above their average. What? A lot of kicking from the Cats. A lot of, fair bit of kicking off the ground, just keeping momentum on the ball. That went on a fair bit throughout the course of the game, and it definitely skews that number a bit. The Dogs also tried to play a linked-up handball game and turned it over quite a lot, especially in the second, and then the first half of the third quarter. It was some ambitious handball that was kind of blowing up in their face on quite a few occasions and leading to Geelong goals, and relatively easy ones for the most part as well. But the Dogs, they're a high possession team. We kind of blunted that a bit. Their handball game got going. We didn't utilize it as much. The stats reflect it, but I don't think there's a huge amount to see here. This is more or less the tail of the tape for both teams throughout the course of the season. Just surprised that, Geelong actually went on to win disposals. Inside 50 in favour of the Dogs. Look, again, averages-wise, pretty average for both teams here. Not much to see. Same with disposal efficiency and efficiency inside 50. The key thing, though, is that Geelong's inside 50s efficiency inside 50 is so high, and our kicking for goal was so good that we were piling on the goals and really extending a margin there for the longest time. That percentage drops off a little bit, and there would have been some additional problems, but no, both teams, I think, played on a very, very similar level tonight. It was just Geelong was a bit more deadly in front of the sticks. The free kick count, I haven't checked out Luke Beveridge's press conference yet, but I've been informed that he had a bit of a crack at the umpires. I believe that there's some Dogs fans having a bit of a complaint because they just look at a number of 26-12 and go, umpires gave it to them. But let's be brutally honest here. There was a lot of throws that weren't called for the Dogs, so that could have been more free kicks to Geelong. And there was a lot of ill-disciplined acts from the Dogs, and this is going to, some of the 50s, that's going to skew that figure as well. Like there was some really clumsy efforts from the Dogs that gave Geelong free kicks. I like to think that when I have these conversations and I talk about it, that I come from a pretty unbiased space when it comes to the free kick count. I obviously want to see my team win. I obviously, I'm going to try and find the positives in what the Cats do. But I don't have any major issues with it. There were a few calls where I go, oh, no, we probably didn't need to make a call there. It was, I was 50-50. I can see it, but I don't know if that necessarily had to be called. And that probably did favour Geelong a little bit more than it did the Dogs, but not a 26-12 sort of discrepancy, maybe more like a 20-12 sort of discrepancy. So I don't make too much of that at all. I don't think it had any bearing on the result at the end of the day. The Dogs benefited from a 50 that led to a goal. The Cats benefited from a 50 that led to a goal. Not much to see here. Stoppages, the hitouts, I guess this is the most important part of the game for us to discuss because it's where Geelong's greatest weaknesses have often been. The hitout count, pretty equal. Nothing really to see there. Lots of stoppages. Oh, dear, I'm sorry. I'm recording this really, really late after the game now, where post-game live is running parallel to this as we speak. The clearance figures, the Dogs, win in that respect. They are one of the best clearance teams in the competition. They are one of the best midfield teams in the competition. But again, the way Geelong blunted it with the way they set up behind the ball was the most important thing in this game. They did a great job of it, especially early. And some of those clearances meant very little for the Dogs in the end. Especially some of those centre clearances. Geelong winning the stoppage clearances, as is usually their way. Possession, everything around possession here is just kind of marries the disposal figures from before. Geelong match possession, we had the ball in our hands so much more than the Dogs. Not necessarily just, in terms of disposals, in terms of possession count, but in terms of time. We were careful. We were methodical. When we went forward, we were super smart about the decisions we made that ensured the ball stayed in our hands, or at the very least, it was a 50-50. And that's why we held on to the ball as much as we did through the game, dominated through the last quarter, the last 10 minutes when it counted. The Dogs put all of their chips into getting back in that third quarter and early in the fourth and ran out of legs. The Cats held on. Further stats to highlight the kicking to handball ratio we discussed before. And of course, there's the scores. Defensively, great. It's good to see it. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more from the Cats in this respect. Tackles inside 50. We were very efficient, so that's going to, I guess, ensure that number stays a little bit lower. But I think there was still some opportunities for some defensive pressure there, some opportunities that were missed in terms of the actual tackles. Our intensity all night was awesome. We corralled really well. There was a few times where I think we probably could have gone for the tackle and didn't. It's not a major grievance, though, to be honest. The bounces, 4 of those 5 would have been Max Holmes with his goal of the year. So let's not make anything of that either. All right, let's get into some of the player stats, talk about some of the individuals here. We're going to filter not by advance. We're going to filter by Cats and focus on our boys initially. And then I want to talk a little bit about Ed Richards and his matchup against Oisin Mullen and how that developed over the course of the game before we're done. Reece Stanley with 43 hitouts in a matchup against Tim English. Is it a sensational effort? I thought he had a pretty good game, Reece, but I didn't realize it was that good. He did a great job. I think Tim English probably still got the chocolates in the end, but not by much. I think this was a pretty hard-fought contest. It's probably like a 60-40 swing in favor of Tim English, but Reece did a really great job. And for someone who's in his twilight days of his career, I think did a great job against a ruckman who's really coming into his peak. Bailey Smith, again, 33 disposals, did a great job, worked through the boos and the hooting and hollering of the toothless Bulldog supporters, and continued to build his way through the game. Started really, really hot, was curtailed a little bit through the second and third, but exploded again hard when we needed him late in the last quarter. That is his greatest asset. He's got the tank, he's got the stamina, he's got the legs to just keep going all game long at the same speed, and he really worked his way back into the game in the final quarter in particular. Jeremy Cameron with his 6 was incredibly dynamic, did some great things, some goal assists, some score involvements. He had 9 of those, did a fantastic job in that respect. Sean Manor is an individual I want to come back to shortly. I discussed him on Postgame Live before I jumped out to record this, and I want to talk a little bit more about Sean Manor going forward. Max Holmes, some great stuff, and goal of the week at least, and going to be a serious contender for goal of the year with that 3 or 4 bounces down the wing into the forward line, straight through the goals there for him. Another great effort. Sam De Koning had some really awesome moments, had some moments that weren't as brilliant, but overall, great game from him. Lawson Humphries just, he sleeps under the radar a little bit. He did some great things, but it was a pretty subdued, quiet sort of game from him. He just quietly achieved. Tyson Stengel was, he's step by step getting closer to his best again. Mitch Duncan, very limited game time. I think it was about 59% game time in the end from him, which was a bit disappointing, but he, did some great things with the time he was on there. Congratulations, Mitch, on your 300th game. An incredible career, and we have so much love for you. Have a rest next week against the Eagles, but I look forward to seeing you back the week after that for a game against the Suns. He, did some really good things, stood up when it mattered, physical when he needed to be, was a real leader. Jed Buse with some really great spoils over the course of the game was pretty good too. Ollie Dempsey, 1 goal 3, could have been 3 goals 1. He's had a couple strange weeks like that. Tom Atkins doing some great things and got his tackle game going in a big way with 12. Brian Myers, spoke about dynamic before when it came to Jeremy Cameron. Really dynamic game from Brian Myers. Lots of really clever kicks. 1 or 2 that didn't work out and they kind of, resulted in some rebound plays for the Dogs. But you expect that with the way he tries to attack the game, the way he tries to weight the ball so perfectly. He's threading the needle so often. Every now and then you're going to miss. So I think it was a great game from Brian. Don't worry about those couple moments. It didn't work, mate. Shannon Neal with the best game of his career, 5 goals straight. And again, I said it before, he stepped up when it counted. When the game was on the line, Shannon Neal was the one in that fourth quarter. And I'm so delighted to see it. Does the combination of Neil, Stengel, and, Ollie Henry all kind of finding some signs of form in the last few weeks, or the last week and a half, I should say. The last game and a half, I should say, does continue to, I guess, stir up my question and concern about danger in the forward line and the impact it's having on the others. But they could also really get their tails up in a big way off the back of this, and danger returning does nothing for it. They've found the confidence they need. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out, because danger's only a week or two away, according to the medical report. Oisin Mullen did a great job on Ed Richards early. It seemed like they abandoned the tag there, and then Ed Richards got off the leash. But I think he, for the time that he was spending on him, really showed that the tagging role is quite well suited to him. He's got the defensive capability. He's got the tank to run through the midfield. He's doing some great things there. Ollie Henry, in and out of the game at different stages, but was important at when it counted, and was always a presence. Didn't lose contests, which I think was really, really important. Jack Henry, as he continues to work his way back into it, didn't have his best game, but was still a really solid contributor. Zach Guthrie, lots of great intercept plays and rebounding. That's his greatest strength, and he delivered in that respect. I think I've completely scrolled past. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, we're in numerical order at the moment. It's fine. Ted Closey came on late as the sub. Got, buried himself at the bottom of some contests, some really good contested possessions, but obviously low disposals because he barely spent any time on the ground. How long did he spend? 8% of game time. I'm sorry, Ted. We think very highly of you, and I think we've got a really great future in the hoops. 8% of game time sucks. Mark O'Connor, again, backing up from last week, did some really good things. Tom Stewart, a great return from him. Started on the bench, but, some really great efforts from him. You could see the Tom Stewart of old back this week. Brad Close wasn't really required as much this week, but some really clever plays at different stages. And Mark Blitzar's tagged the Bont through the second half and just impacted the ball often enough, impacted the quality of Bont's disposal to such a point that it kind of... Bont was great, one of the best on the ground, but he could have been a lot more, and Blitz did a great job of keeping him under wraps. I've already kind of addressed the Ed, what's his name? Ed Richards thing before. I would have liked to have seen Oisin Mullen stick on the tagging job for a bit longer. He's done a great job against Dacos and Butters lately, and I think Ed Richards was the perfect player for him to be on. Surprised they didn't stick with it a little bit longer than they did. Perhaps all game, because he absolutely thrived. His stats in the end up being really quite impressive. Disposals, he had 28, 15 kicks, 13 handballs, 2 goals. One of those was at the beginning of the game. I'm very lucky, but he was a huge part of the play. 10 clearances, 3 goal assists is a big, big number. I think we could have done a bit more to squash him, and Oisin probably should have stayed on him, but we dodged a bullet nonetheless. Let's just not repeat that. Matt Kennedy, with his best game for the Dogs so far, was huge for the Dogs, and big part. Him and Ed Richards in particular, a massive part of the Dogs surging back into the game like they did. That is where we're going to wrap things up for this game. The Cats again, winners to the tune of 14 points, 20 goals, 7, 127, beating the Dogs 16, 17, 113. Good kicking is good football. Bad kicking is bad football. That split the two teams at the end of the day. And I'm a little bit anxious about playing the Dogs later in the year, because who knows what will happen then. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been an awesome time talking about this game. It's been great to watch. What a spectacle it was. Geelong have been playing in so many blockbusters this year, game after game after game of high-quality stuff against high-quality opponents. We got the chocolates again. We are 7-4. With a game against the Eagles next week, there is a massive opportunity to start springboarding into a top 4 spot and try and lock it down for the rest of the season. Thank you all for watching this. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. There's lots of awesome content we're publishing there. Post-game live, if you want to go check out the probably 3 hour plus long deep dive into this match, go check out Post-game live, hosted by myself and then Ben taking over from me. The chaps will do their review later in the week. You can check out the Paul James show, and there's lots of other videos that we post all the time that we hope you enjoy. If you do, consider checking out our Patreon. For $5 a month, you can subscribe and get early access to content. There's exclusives, and there's some extended content there as well. The Chaps Chat Cats, you're usually missing about 45 minutes of the show by not being a patron. So consider becoming a patron. You can get a whole bunch of awesome stuff, and it only costs $5 a month. There's a 7-day free trial period as well. You can sign up there. If it's for you, keep it up. We'd really appreciate your support and helping the Hoops crew dream to grow. You'll find me on socials at Paul James Games. That is Blue Sky. That is Instagram. That is Twitter. The Hoops crew is at the Hoops crew. And until next time, go Cats, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.